Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Advancing Man Project podcast. I am your host, Dave Whitley, the Iron Tamer, and today I have a fantastic guest on, a new friend of mine that I just met earlier this year, but we've got a lot in common. We've got some common acquaintances, and I'm really super excited that he agreed to be on the show. My new friend, Chuck Pennington, you're in Austin, right, Chuck?
Yes, I am.
In Austin, Texas.
Just outside Austin.
Just outside Austin, which I was in Austin back in August and taught a workshop down there for Old Time Strongman University. But that was a story for another time. I met Chuck virtually because he has been working with my friend and mentor, Dr. Joe Vitale, for 15 years, doing websites, copywriting, marketing, business partner, and he's friends, of course, with Joe. Excuse me. And Chuck's been a software and database engineer for 25 years. One of the cool things he did with Dr. Joe Vitale was he co-authored a book that they wrote live in front of an audience in a 3-hour time stretch. And I've seen the videos that go along with that. It's a really fascinating process. And a lot of it mirrors the process of my book, Superhuman You, that Dr. Joe Vitale dared me to write. I've told that story before, but anybody wants a copy of that, I send it out for free. It's superhumanyoutbook.com as long as you are in the continental contiguous 48 United States, because shipping it to Canada or Australia, I cannot do that and give the book away for free. I just ask that you pay for shipping, which comes out to be about $10. Chuck is the founder and chief inspiration officer, which is a fantastic title, of Harmonic Thought, which is a personal development and growth company based there in his home state of Texas. He's authored several books. The book that he co-authored with Joe in 3 hours live was called The Five Questions, I believe, but also Human Being 2.0, the human operating system, and how to reboot your life and stay in tune with what you want. He's an expert on how to use the human operating system to live from a place of inspiration and to empower people's minds to enable them to effortlessly create the abundant life that they desire. He draws on his experience as a computer programmer and has connected the dots between computer programming and operating systems in that area and operating systems within us in these meat suits that we walk around in that we call human. And it's really interesting, really fascinating work. He created the website harmonicthought.com, and it's the internet's first workout facility for the mind and spirit. He's finally tuned his analytical skills and to create this unique perspective on belief systems, emotional systems, spiritual systems, and the other systems that make up this human experience. And I love this sentence that I got from him when we were doing the initial information gathering to have him on the show. He knows that love is the greatest clearing energy available to us all, and it's the source of all inner peace. And the more that I learn about things like Ho'oponopono, the more I study people like Neville Goddard and you know all of those people, the more clear it is to me that love is the greatest healing energy and antidote for any problem that we have, and love is the root of all good things. So the entire mission of Chuck's harmonicthought.com operation is to bring more love energy into the world. So, Chuck, thanks for being on the show. For the people that are on video, you can see there are a bevy of guitars hanging behind you. If you're listening and not watching on the YouTube video, Chuck's got a bunch of cool guitars hanging back there. And actually, one of the first questions I ever reached out to Chuck and asked about was one of the particular guitars hanging on the wall behind him that yelled out to me and said, "Talk to Chuck about me." And so I did. But here we are. We got a lot in common. We got some common friends. And I really appreciate you being on the show.
Well, Dave, thank you very much. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and looking forward to seeing where we go today and getting some exploration of some cool stuff and
Yeah, we go
talking
live
about
without a net here. That's always been my intention behind this podcast is it winds up just being two dudes talking, and really selfishly it's me getting to talk to people that I might not get a chance to talk to otherwise, and so I'm really grateful for that. Talk to me a little
I
bit more
remember.
about harmonic life systems, harmonic thought, and what all that means.
Well, everybody kind of is familiar, I think, with the phrase everything is energy. And if you're not, that's a paradigm out there.
Yep.
everything we everything we do, everything we interact with, everything that we touch, feel, think, emote as emotions, all that stuff vibrates. And if you look at life in terms of a guitar, let's say, you got 6 strings on a guitar. All those 6 strings need to be in tune for the guitar to sound wonderful. If you put it in an untuned guitar in the hands of a great musician, it's not going to sound as good as if it were in perfect tune. And so another thing that kind of led me to dovetailing systems and spirituality is I have a good friend, Harry B. Happy, who is a former Buddhist monk. And he and I would have these conversations about spirituality of the Buddhist, and how all of this esoteric sort of woo woo stuff works. And then I was like, yeah, but how? How do we interact with it as human beings? And what are the operating systems, me being a tech guy? What are the sort of things, the tools that we have at our disposal that allow us to interact with this cosmic goo that we live in? And the 5 questions book came out of a coding question, because when you're doing software code, you want to write as few lines of code as possible. You don't want to
Mm.
go on about it. You want it to be efficient. And so the 5 questions were, what are the 5 yes or no questions that you can ask yourself that will define every belief system you have? And so that's the core of that book. And why that is, we all deal, and in self-help particularly, we will deal with the symptoms of a project or a problem and not ever realize that we're only dealing with the peripheral aspects of it. We're not dealing with the core nature of where the problem came from. And so when we can sort of reverse engineer those things, that's kind of how those questions come about, and being more efficient about fixing the stuff that we want to fix, you know.
As you say that, I'm reminded of a trite expression that I've heard before of um if you went into your kitchen, you hadn't been in there for a couple of hours, and the sink was turned on and the water was running and the sink had overflowed and it was spilling out into the floor and the entire floor was wet, what is the first thing you would do? And the obvious answer is turn the water off, then unclog the sink, right? But most of
Right.
us, when we're faced with something that's less tangible and more metaphysical or energetic or spiritual, whatever you want to call it, that is a mess building up like that, our first inclination is to grab the mop and let the water
Mm-hmm.
keep running and leave the sink um, clogged. So that came to mind when you were saying that right there. I'm interested to hear more about how these 5 questions can get us to the root of how to turn the water off or unclog the sink or insert whatever the appropriate metaphor is there. I'd love to hear you go a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe and I have run a mentoring program called Zero Limits Mentoring for about 4 years now, and we've had people coming in and out of that program. And the cool
I am
thing
one of
about
those
running a
people.
program,
I have been a part of that for a while now, and I it was a fantastic experience.
well,
So
yeah, cool, thank you. And so yeah, and they all come in at different points in their life, in different, everybody goes through their journeys at different times and at different speeds, and we all have our own human experience that we have. But we, and I do masterminds at Joe's live events when we used to do live events. And a lot of the 5 questions came about through the interactions of all these mastermind groups, because as I would listen to them, I want to go back to everybody was playing around the periphery of what the issue
Hmm.
was, and they wanted to solve these symptoms. And I was like, you're just taking pills that are masking the symptoms.
Mm.
When we're playing, when you're writing computer code, there's the thing that gets um, it gets operate the operating system operates it.
Hmm.
And then you get all these downstream effects. So it's like, oh, there's a bug in the data, or this system didn't work right, or the user didn't do the right thing that I was expecting them to do in the user interface, and so they did something different. And so when you're sitting there and you look at out into a software system, a human operating system, we see problems and issues, and we tend to do just like what you just said. We tend to grab the mop. We start shooting the alligators in the swamp, and we don't go, well, why are there alligators in the swamp? And do I want those? Or am I in a swamp where there's alligators? Maybe I should get the hell out of the swamp.
Right. Right.
It's like, wow, I put myself in this scenario and I shouldn't even be here. So it's like there's a level of stuff that when you start breaking it down, a lot of different stuff becomes evident. And one of the first questions is I am I a creative being? And so a lot of people, and it's not the creative aspect of, am I an artist? Am I a musician? Am I, you know, an artist in the typical sense? Is, am I creative in the sense that I am like a fractal of God itself? Because there's the statement, oh, we're made in the same image as God. And that's in Christianity, and it's in a bunch of different other religions.
Hmm.
But that can't be the physical shape. It just can't be. To me, that statement means whatever created us, that allowed this whole universal thing to take place, has bestowed in us, much like we've been bestowed arms and legs and a body and a mind, that creative nature, that we can move into the cosmic goo of life and affect change, that we can create our lives, that the life doesn't just happen to us. And a lot of people I found stranglehold themselves instantly by going, that's not me. Who am I to do this? Life happens to me. And they're in this victimhood state, like Joe talks about in the awakening course. The first state we all go through is victimhood. The programming of society has told me that I'm not the person that affects change. Who am I? I'm just a cog in this whole bigger thing, when in fact we are, each one of us, the creation point of our own realities. So, and the thing is, these are all, the 5 questions are all yes or no questions. And if you answer yourself no or hesitate, you've answered no, because it's a paradigm that a lot of people just don't realize they are the powerful person in their equation.
I think that,
And so people,
yeah, but bringing up the thing about victimhood and um, uh, having known Joe for a while and read a lot of his work, you've known him a lot longer and know him a lot better than I do. One of the key concepts that pops up through everything he does, and from way back in the day all the way up through Ho'oponopono and everything that he's doing now, is the idea of 100% responsibility for everything that's going on in our lives, right? And I think that we are, I agree that we're born into a victimhood, that's how we arrive, because a victim is, and this is my interpretation of it, much like an infant being completely reliant on everyone around them to take care of everything. Um, if we grow up and we're able to take care of ourselves, but we continue to insist on being reliant upon other people to take care of us, whether that be physically, spiritually, emotionally, or whatever, that is actively remaining in that victimhood state. And the really cool thing about being a victim is it's so incredibly safe. I don't have to own anything about my circumstances. Oh, well, I'm this way because this terrible thing happened, or these other people did it to me. And when reality, that's just the other side of the coin of being a newborn baby, and the baby cries, the baby gets fed, and if someone else doesn't feed it, then it doesn't eat. Well, if we carry that into adulthood, if I don't feed my own unwanted circumstances, or allow by calling out to other people to support whatever needs to whatever those circumstances need to be nourished to remain, then I'm no longer being a victim. And that's a really, really scary, terrifying place when we first have to look at, okay, I have to be responsible for myself, not just in feeding myself and bathing myself and clothing myself, but I have to be responsible for all the relationships in my life. And I have to be responsible for how I am interpreting the relationships of my parents and my grandparents and all the people around me. Because if I continue to interpret it as, like you said, life is something that is happening to me instead of something that I am creating from within, then it's really, really comforting to be able to not own that, because now in anything bad happens, it wasn't my fault. I'm the victim here.
Yeah.
Someone else did this
Hmm.
to me. But in reality,
Yeah.
what we're doing there is consenting to um, uh, our own life, our own future, our own moment by moment existence being driven by the whims of other people, and us either consenting to what we believe supports that, or not. And the inherent power there is wasted, because we would
Yeah.
rather a lot of us would rather choose the safety of the familiar victimhood than to face the abject terror of becoming empowered. And that's the second step, right? Because once we become empowered, now we've accepted responsibility.
Right.
and,
Yeah. The
and
100% ownership is a scary proposition. Uh, but to me, it's more of a after. I mean, I
mhm,
went through this. I mean, everybody think, oh, you're the coach. You went through with Joe. It's no insulation. These processes are no insulation to the human experience. What they will do is help you. And so, as you sit there and stare down the barrel of, oh my God, I am really 100% responsible for every perception I've ever had about anything in my life. It is all on me. Everything that I blamed others on is not true. It is only my perception of these events that are framing my perception. And so the 100% thing, after you get over the fear, becomes the greatest gift of all, because it
mhm,
makes you the one-stop shop for fixing it.
definitely.
You
And
know, and your teaching that you do with fathers and all of that resonates so deeply there, because it's the programming of society, it's the programming of our families, it's the programming of the stuff that we went through. And we were just talking about this, that you imprint onto your children. And we were talking about the thing you want to imprint necessarily might not be the thing that you are,
right.
or the experience that you had. And you go, wow, I came up through this victimhood, I realize this now. And just like you were saying, you're revealing emotions to your child, but that's not a vulnerable thing. That's a gift. Your child now knows, wow, you can have those emotions, these deep feeling emotions inside yourself, and the world's not going to fall apart.
Hmm.
But it's just something we go through. And that's what we're here for each other as we all go through this. We were talking about love and gratitude. You know, the fact that we are there for each other, the fact that we're here on this phone call today, I'm grateful for, because it's like people are going to listen to this and somebody's going to get something out of it they needed. You know, when Joe and I go on stages, we do a little Ho'oponopono prayer. We do a thing. Hey, even the notes that I have for myself, if something hits me that the audience needs to know that I didn't have planned, please let me say it. And sometimes you're just sitting there talking. It's like, wow, I'm
Where,
getting, some way this story needs to be told, and somebody out there needs to hear it.
yeah.
And so that's the joy about doing these podcasts. It's the joy about the teaching that you're doing. And goodness gracious, fathers, especially in the American society these days, get so many weird ass mixed messages about what to be and how to raise successful children. What is a successful child?
Hmm.
You know, and, you know, it the things like Ho'oponopono, like the meditation, like the self help stuff we all go through, are us striving to be better examples for children, for ourselves. I mean, the first thing you got to do is make sure you're all good.
Right. Well, and I
And,
think that I think that
go
goes
ahead.
back. You said earlier that you can take an untuned guitar and put it in the hands of a great player, and it's going to sound terrible.
Right.
Like as you were saying that, I was thinking if we take an untuned guitar and hand it to a great player, it's not going to sound that different from if we take a perfectly tuned guitar and hand it to someone who's never played before. It's just gonna
Right.
it's just gonna be noise, right? But the next,
Sound weird in a different way.
yeah, and so it has to be
It ain't
tuned.
gonna be right.
Yeah, in and of itself, it has to
Right.
be tuned first of all, but then for it to make music with other people, it has to be tuned to the other instruments in whatever ensemble collab we've got going on, right? Um, when you said the thing about being on stage and having your notes and something coming to you, um, that uh, it's awesome that you said that. And I was gonna say it's funny that you say that, but once I tell you, it's perfectly in alignment that you said that. Today is a Thursday, and on Monday of this week, I was in um, a little town outside of Atlanta, and I did two strongman school assembly things for third through fifth graders. And one of the things that I have historically done in my shows to for uh, keynote stuff and for college age and high school and that sort of stuff is I'll do a call and response thing where I will say, "Who am I?" and I'll get the audience to say "Iron Tamer" back and forth. It's, to build a connection and and then the punchline to that joke is because I usually perform in a kilt, and the punchline to that joke is who am I, Iron Tamer? Okay, now when this is all done and you're on your way home, I don't want anybody saying that big dude in the kilt was strong, right? And that's just kind of a funny little joke, right? And as I was walking up, I looked out at this group of 150 third through fifth graders, and I'm like, there is no way that's going to translate. I'm going to lose them if I open with that, if that's the first thing out. So I go out and I just kind of skip that part and I just go straight into the once upon a time part of the show. And then I had a moment of inspiration. Um, because the whole show is centered around the idea of we become what we think about and imagination and inspiration and action working together. And so I told a story because you referenced earlier me and the people who've heard me talk more than 30 minutes have probably heard me tell the story about writing out the list of who I want to be for my son and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to recap that whole story. But there's a story that I haven't told you about when my son was about 3.5 years old. And this story came to me, and I'm like, okay, I'm telling this story. I don't know why I'm telling this story, but I'm telling this story. Um, he's about 3.5 years old. He climbs up to the top of a slide that he had never been on in a park, and he looks around, and it's visible the fear on his face. He's never been this high off the ground, or something was new and unusual about it. And he looked around, and he said, "Daddy, I feel nervous," which is his catch-all phrase for anything uncomfortable. If he's feeling, any sort of anxiety or fear or uncertainty, anything like that. Um, he's a little older now. He's starting to differentiate between nervousness and excitement and true fear. And but that was his that was his default definition or his word for any feeling that was associated with that. And I said, well, it's okay to be nervous. You're way up high. And he looks thoughtful for a second. He says, can I say my I ams? Now, let me back up for a moment.
Mm.
His I ams from literally the day he was born, just about every single day, but maybe not every day, but just about every single day, either his mother or myself or both of us in some combination have reinforced to him these like mantras or these affirmations that he's smart, that he's kind, that he's strong, that he's brave, and that he can do anything. And so he sits there at 3.5 years old or whatever it was on the top of that slide, and he just with authority says, I am brave, I am strong, I am smart, I am kind, and I can do anything. And then he comes down that slide and I catch him. I'm crying, he's laughing. It's this great moment of, because so often when we're doing any sort of thing, either with our kids or with ourselves, and we're repeating affirmations or mantras, or we're focusing our intention, or we're imagining things, or we're doing Ho'oponopono to clean stuff. It may seem like we're just doing it over and over and over again, and we're not getting any result. But it's kind of like going to the gym, right? You don't go to the gym once and then look in the mirror and you've lost 30 pounds. But if you do it consistently every day, those unnoticeable difference over 6 months add up. So to see that come to fruition in him was a beautiful thing. So that story comes to me and I tell it to these kids and I turn that into the call and response. And I said, I want you guys to say this with me. And I said, I'm brave. And then they said it. I'm smart. And they said it all the way through the whole list. And it went over great. And the teachers and the principals and everybody brought me and thought it was great and wonderful. And okay, great. So I come home. The next day, I get a text from the principal who organized both shows. And she sent me a photograph of this piece of paper that had been scribbled on with a pink marker. And she told me that a student brought this to her, and it was Gina's I ams. And it said, I am brave, I'm kind, I'm smart, I'm strong, I can do anything. And then she added some. This little third grade girl added, I am a star, but she drew a star instead of writing out the word star. I am there was something else that I'm drawing a blank on, but the biggest one for me, she said, I am myself. And I'm like, wow. So that's why I went to Georgia. That's why I did those shows. That's why I didn't do what I normally do and just allowed that download to happen. And
Yeah, man.
all of that ties back to it, like victimhood is wanting to control things. And had I said, no, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to resist this inspired thought and I'm going to stick to the thing that where I have the control. But by relinquishing that control and allowing it to come through me, who knows what kind of impact, pebble in the pond ripple style that's going to have. So, and here we are, and you're talking about
And you
having the
allowed,
same experience, and it's a beautiful thing when that kind of stuff happens.
yeah, and you allowed yourself to go, I'm a creative person. I'm going to come up with something
Right there,
and
right
not
there it
be
is.
scared and be, oh my God, this thing doesn't work. I've screwed myself over. I'm going
Hmm.
to embarrass myself in front of these kids.
Yeah.
It was like, no, man, let it go. It'll happen. And aren't we all just your kid on top of the slide? When we face these things in life, when we face the fear of being 100% responsible for our
Hmm.
entire perceptions, we're just sitting at the top of the slide going, that scares the shit out of me. That's a place I'm not comfortable with. I've never been in this spot before, but I'm a human and I'm strong and I'm creative and you know, the universe is on my side for me to get through this. And so now I can say, what am I? Instead of being the victim and going,
Hmm.
I'm this, I'm that, I'm what society told me to be, I'm the result of all these things that have happened. It's a going forward phoenix kind of rebirth at every single time you're on top of the slide, you know? And so that's an absolutely wonderful story. And you know, the fact that you got it into the hands of kids and
Yeah.
stuff is phenomenal. I mean, the stuff that we all talk about here as adults is it's enlightening and sad a little bit at the same time, in that how did we all get so fucked up?
Yeah.
Excuse my vernacular there, but how did we all get here? It's like the whole self-help thing. It's like we get to adults and we're like, well, it's like the Talking Heads song, how
Right.
did I get here?
Exactly.
um, this is not my beautiful life. This is not my so I mean, it's that is to say that it's part of the human condition, is that we are all struggling for this better version of ourselves. It's like camping rules, just like we were talking about earlier. Leave it better than you found it.
Hmm.
So if I can leave myself better than I found myself, and Joe has this perspective, the witness. It's
Right.
the it's the part of us that can watch the rest of you operate and go, wow, self, you know what? We need to sit and talk. I mean, I look at my brain as sort of like I'm the CEO of my mind.
Hmm.
And it's like I've got the Department of Health, I've got the Department of Finance, I've got love, I've got relationships, I've got this, that, and the other thing. And if an aspect of my mind is bringing me garbage, I'm like, mm-mm, no, you need to go back and come up with something better. If that's what you're going to bring to the table, self,
Hmm.
I don't want that. I mean, so there has been time in my life where I'm like, and I use this phrase, it's like, just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's a good one. So, the state of victimhood leads us into all kinds of funky misperceptions about ourselves. And so, if we can clean and clear that stuff away, I was thinking about this the other day. It's like all this self help stuff that's out there from the 1800s, from Plato and the Stoics, from Buddha, from all of the stuff you've ever read. It's all about telling you what you already have. This power that we seek is born into us. It's as much as of the human being as your arms, legs, or anything else. And we think we have to go through somebody or some process for that to be bestowed upon us. And that is so wrong. It is there. It's always there. It's been there since you were born. It's there this moment, and it will be there for you as soon as we get off this call to call upon. And all of that is trying to tell you, here's how you tap the power that's already there. None of those books, none of any of it says you have to go through this particular process to get there. They are stories of, here's how I got there.
Hmm.
Charles Haanel, the Master Key System, 24 chapters. That's how Charles Haanel sees it. That's right there. That's how he sees it. Joe has written books. That's how he sees it.
Hmm.
But the thing is, it's all about clearing away the crap that makes us feel like victims, such that we realize what we already are. And that to me is one of the things that people that come through that mentoring program, they think they're, oh, I've got to go through Buddha, or I've got to go through this teacher, or I've got to go through this. It's all just different versions of the same stuff. Buddha wasn't a Buddhist. Christ wasn't a
No
Christian.
Christian. No.
Those things got derived by men, by humanity. Those are stories of the most epic versions of humanity. And even Buddha and Jesus and anybody else who has told those stories says, no, it's in you. You are this. And anything that we do that keeps us from that, judgment, blame, victimhood, all that stuff adds to that pile. And we can start stripping it away. It's like, oh, what a joy to be 100% responsible. And how did I think it was any other way? Because when you get on the other side of it, you're like, of course, I mean, we as human beings, I can't reach into Dave Whitley and have an experience for you. You can't reach into me and do it. It's not the way we
Right.
operate. We have our own equations that we are the variables in. And so, being able to strip off all the garbage is more to me what self-help is about, and personal development, rather than getting some mystery process or secret handshake that you got to go through.
Yeah, and I think that the place where a lot of folks will get tripped up in personal development or well in a lot of different areas too, like being a parent, being a musician even, right? We were talking about this
Mhm.
before I hit record, is that yes, it is absolutely true. You cannot come into me and have an experience for me. I can't go inside you and have an experience for you. So that feels like a separation. But like you talked about, Joe wrote books and that's how Joe did it. And then the master key system, that's how, that was that person's journey and all that sort of stuff. If we look at the commonalities among everything, what we see there is this continual process of someone is walking a path, they're arriving at a place that they have to do it by themselves. But we were talking earlier about athletics. Talking about musicians and stuff like that. Um, the value of having someone in your corner that can help guide the way is
Yes.
immeasurable, right? Having a coach like with the Zero Limits program, like what I do or what you do with harmonic thought, the true value there is that I can, or you can, the coach can look at the person who's going through the fire and say, "You're in the fire. It's hot. I know it's hot. I can't pull you out of the fire. You have to keep going." That makes me think of the old Japanese sword maker's proverb. I don't know if you know this one or not. The iron ore believes it's being needlessly tortured as it passes through the forge. The tempered steel looks back and knows.
Hmm.
Like you have to go through it
Yes.
to get there. Um, but I think that a lot of people will subscribe to the idea, well, I can do it by myself because no one can do it for me. Therefore, I don't need a coach. And I believe that that's setting you up for a whole lot of unwanted lessons that could be learned faster and easier because sacrifice is
Yeah.
necessary. Sacrifice means I've got to give up something of value in exchange for something that I perceive as greater value. Absolutely necessary for growth in any area, no matter what we're going to do. You want to get better at playing the
Hmm.
guitar, you got to sacrifice some time. You may not be able to watch Netflix right now. You want to be a great parent, you got to sacrifice playing video games, hang out with your kid, and do that sort of stuff. You want to have a great physique, you sacrifice the chili cheese fries and beer and go to bed early and get up and go to the gym. Sacrifice is absolutely necessary. But sacrifice, I believe, too often gets equated with suffering, and suffering is optional
Right. Right.
because I can give this thing up joyfully, knowing that I'm going to receive the thing of greater value. You and me go out to dinner, and I'd say I'm going to pick up the check, and I'd say I sacrifice $100 for that. Was my dinner with Chuck, the food, the company, the entire experience worth more than $100 to me? I'm sure it would be. So I've
Right.
sacrificed this $100 to have that experience. There's no amount of suffering involved in that. But I think that when we talk about personal development and personal responsibility, we immediately, because of being born into victimhood, go into a place of responsibility. But that sounds like suffering. I've got to change. I love me too much. I'm not going to give
Well,
me up.
there's a paradigm that you addressed it. I think I can do this myself. And, you know, everybody seems to have a paradigm that, football players can have coaches, baseball players can have coaches, musicians and actors can have coaches to make them get better. Cooking people can go to CIA and learn how to cook better and more efficiently. Yet when we go to self-help and self-development, it's like, well, that's weird. I don't people messing with my brain.
Right.
So the paradigm kind of falls apart for a lot of people. And I would put it kind of simply like this, well, what has a life coach got that I don't have? And how could he have any or she have any more experience than I've got? And, blah, blah, blah. Well, I've done, you know, several live events with Joe and had thousands of people in mastermind. I've had 4 years of people coming through the Zero Limits mentoring program. And so you see the patterns of people's behavior, and that's what coaches can do. They can look at your equation from outside the equation. You can't see the equation because you're in it. And a coach can go, look, I don't know if you're seeing this whole equation, but you got this thing over here that's jacking with the rest of your whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can fix this, then the rest of this stuff will just solve itself. And I can say that because I've seen it happen. And I've solved those problems for people when they get on the other side, just like you were saying, you're going, well, that was so worth it. And how did I keep myself from being there for so long? And so while the blade feels tortured in the heat on the other side, it's, now I'm a finely honed sword. And now
Mm-hmm.
I can slice through my issues with much more efficiency. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know how and why that paradigm. I think it's the victimhood thing. It's like, hey, if you need help figuring yourself out, you're less.
Right.
No. I mean, every successful person I know is like, dude, I talked to this person, I talked to that person, I'm asking this person. I mean, as much as me and Joe know about internet marketing and how many books Joe has written about this stuff, we're still talking to professional teams about what works today. Because and here's another thing, what worked for Joe to get him where he is may not work going forward. I mean, post COVID changed a bunch of our business. And so you have to pivot. And if you're sitting there going, oh, COVID happened and it just killed us, and da, da, da. The people that I saw through COVID, I was like, man, there is so much innovation that's about
Mm-hmm.
to be unleashed because there's people trying to solve so many different problems. Zoom became a way to communicate, whereas like, video meetings, that's weird. I don't have those. I'm not a normal. And now everybody knows what
Right.
Zoom is. Everybody knows what it is to go order food at a grocery store and pick it up and have them put it in the back of your car. That paradigm didn't exist 3 years ago as much as it did now.
That
My
that that you
kids don't.
Yeah, that
My
that you're
kid
saying right
doesn't
there, that is something that we
go
still do to
shopping
this
in a
day.
grocery store
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, that was the thing. After COVID, my wife and I were like, why would we go spend 90 minutes in the grocery store when we can spend 15 placing the order?
And then some friendly person comes, packs it up, and you drive home.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, all of this stuff. It's the the story of your boy being up at the top of the slide and going, I'm in an uncomfortable spot, but I'm going to get myself through this.
Yeah, and that
And
was
you were
so
the coach at that point. You were the coach, and it wasn't like you were coaching them in that moment necessarily. And that's the cool thing. Everything up to that point led to that epic decision on top of the slide to go, I can get myself through this. I'm
mhm.
not a victim. And not only that, the little guy was taking 100% responsibility for his deal. He wasn't going, Daddy, come get me off the slide. He was going, you know what? I'm here. I'm going to go. And I know I can do it. And zoom, there he
Yeah,
went.
and I think to that point, there's a couple of things. Um, if anyone coaches another person in anything for any substantial period of time, what we eventually find out is that we as coaches learn as much or more from the student than they learn from us. And I think that's primarily because it gets us to walk that path again and see the things that we might not have seen when we were walking it for ourselves. Now we're walking it by proxy. Um, and okay, how does what I learned apply to what is going on in this situation? Where are the parallels? Where are the similarities? Because that's where the truth lies, right? You talked about all the different
Right.
religions earlier, and all of those religions, if you boil them down, you will wind up at the same truth, and it's the mission statement of
Exactly.
love, right? The other
It's them
thing,
telling the same story.
mhm,
It's the same story. It's just different characters, different times, different
yeah,
places. It's the same freaking story.
yeah. The beautiful moment for me when he was on top of that slide was that he had suddenly, and this wasn't the first time that it happened, but it was like a very pronounced moment that it had happened. He became the teacher for me because he was right there, and he was perfectly capable and had the opportunity to just go back where he came from to where he knew it was safe, or he could go into the scary thing and have the experience. And he wasn't sure, but he had someone on his side that believed in him enough when he didn't believe it. And I
Mhm.
think that that's a critical role of a coach. Sometimes the role of the coach is just, I need someone to believe in me more than I do right now so that I can get through the thing that I'm and learn the thing that I'm wanting to learn right now.
Yeah, my wife's a teacher. And one of the best things that she does when she starts the class for the year is say, what you're about to learn has been learned by a bunch of people before. And you're going to be able to learn this. There's nothing here that you can't know, that's beyond you, and it's all been done before. And so that is one of the guiding principles of sort of coaching, is leading you through those areas where you're like, I'm not quite sure, but you go, just trust it and do it. And then you get through and you're like, oh, cool.
Hmm.
It worked. That freaking happened. And so there's a level of trust and security and stuff that can come through somebody that is having your back, and that is caring and loving and gentle and compassionate about your scenario. And that's where I have a little bit of issue with coaches who will say, here's the path to this spiritual enlightenment. It's like, well, no, because I haven't gone through spiritual enlightenment yet. I don't know my path because it hadn't been presented yet.
Right.
On the back end, I'll know my path. And that's kind of the point I was making with the self-help books. It's like, you didn't write that before you knew all the stuff. It was a story of what you learned, so you didn't know that when you started, but now you went through it, and so now you can report on what you went through and what happened. But that's those are all templates.
Hmm.
We take our templates and we go forward with them. So um yeah, it's I mean, what you're doing with kids and dads and stuff, I just can't say enough about. I think it's awesome. I think it's the right stuff at the right time in the right place. So congratulations for that. And I just hope that with Joe and everything that we do, that we continue that march on to adulthood.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd love to get Joe more in front of kids. He came to one of my wife's high school classes, and the amount of spark that lit up in those kids' eyes just listening to him was like, oh my God, this has to be a thing.
Well,
So
I from the time that I spent the weekend with him, and he dared me to write that book. Um, from that moment up until literally the last two shows that I did this week, I had never done a show when I have not talked about his influence on stuff that
yeah,
that I'm doing, and I always include a in my slides when I use a slide deck, I always include a photo of him that I took of him after he's holding a piece of steel that he'd been. It's in the book. It's in the Superhuman You book.
yeah,
Because that was one of those moments. It was very much my son on top of the slide. We I think that one of the things that we run into with a hassle in a paradigm that we have around the idea of coaching is that if I'm going to accept coaching from you or accept you as my coach, then that means I have to somehow acknowledge that you are smarter, better, stronger, and brighter at everything in the world
Yeah.
than I am. And that's not the case, because the best coaching relationships that I've ever had have been sympathetic. What's the right? I don't know. Like with Joe. Joe knows what Joe knows. I know feats of strength, and
Yep.
depending on which conversation we were having, and we both knew one of us is the student, one of us is the teacher. And if the
Right
subject
on.
switches, then the roles can switch. And I've had the very good fortune of having several people in my life that I've had that kind of relationship with. And I think that is the best kind of coaching relationship that you can have,
Yeah.
is when it's mutual that way, right? Mutually beneficial. And we wind up
Yeah. Because
with the big win-win, or the triple win that you and me and Joe all like to talk about, where everyone benefits from it.
yeah, because then it dovetails. It's like I'm the coach, I'm the teacher, and then when you go like that, then the really cool stuff. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
now we can get into some really cool stuff. And I remember when Joe was going through all that, he'd send me the pictures. I just bit a nail. You got to meet this guy. He's awesome. So yeah, I mean, that whole transformation was fun to watch. And I've always wanted to sit down and talk with you, so I'm glad we finally got to do it, and we
Yeah,
could make this the first of many if you
I would
want.
love it.
And I'm happy to
I would,
come back anytime and go into other different areas and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
So
definitely. And we'll I'm gonna go into rapid fire questions here in just a moment, but I
no
have to say I
worries.
have, I have to say this last thing. Anytime that I see you on a video screen, because you're always in that same spot, obviously it's in your studio and all that. I look back there and I see that black Les Paul hanging back there behind you, and I'm just like, that is one gorgeous chunk of wood and wire right there. I can hear what it sounds like without it even being plugged in. It's a
Yeah,
beautiful, beautiful instrument. And I think I've sent you photos of my Les Paul.
yeah,
That that's I love
yeah.
a Les
Well,
Paul.
thank you. That was a gift from my wife. Um, and golly, I mean, the neck on that thing just fits my hand better than any Les Paul I've ever picked up. I was just like, this one was built for me.
Yes, yes. I I have one just like that. That the moment I picked it up, I'm like, you now belong to me, and I will bequeath you to my
Yeah.
children when the time comes. Yeah,
It's like Excalibur, it's just
exactly, exactly. And to that point, I was talking, or we were talking a little bit before we started recording, about my dad. And my dad was my first guitar teacher. He was a
oh,
musician
nice,
back in the day. Played outlaw country stuff. He was in a band
nice.
as a guitar player and sideman. Played some fiddle, played some banjo and stuff too, with a guy named Tommy Jennings, who was the brother of the legendary Waylon Jennings. So when I was a
Ah,
kid, that was my dad would be gone for a few weeks, and he'd come home, and he plays this, and I still have it. This beautiful old Gretsch hollow body Chet Atkins model with painted F holes
oh
on it,
man,
which is beautiful. But like the real prized possession from his music days that I have, that much like my Les Paul will go to my son, this amp is going to go. It went to me, and it's going to go to my son. It's a 65 or 66. I've never really gotten the exact date on it, but it's a Fender Super Reverb, the one with the 410-inch speakers
oh,
in it. Beautiful amp. And it's one of the many amps that Stevie Ray Vaughan used. Like not this exact amp, but like that
right,
model of amp was one that
yeah,
was part of Stevie Ray's sound. I think your local boy Eric Johnson has used those before too, but he may have used twins. I'm not sure, but yeah,
yeah.
that
That whole Fender line is just a beautiful sounding line of amps.
yeah,
So
that was
funny.
and 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 that was cutting edge stuff back then too. It's amazing. There's a lot of stuff that happened, that it's much like the personal development stuff or the strongman stuff. There was like this golden age when things happened that
Yes.
we're still trying to live up to. So
Mhm.
that's cool. And so thanks for telling me about that Les Paul. It is absolutely beautiful. But yeah,
Yeah.
let's jump into rapid fire questions here.
All right.
So the way I do this, I throw the question out, whatever comes to mind, answer it. If we wind up going on a tangent with it, it happens sometimes. If not, we just move on to the next one. All right. If you're ready, what
Sounds
is
good.
one useless talent that you have?
One useless talent that I have.
That's a great one. That's a great one. What is the most valuable piece of advice you've ever received?
Um, probably expect miracles.
That's a good one. What is the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
Uh, everybody else is doing it.
Um, favorite holiday?
My favorite holiday? Uh, probably like Halloween.
Oh yeah, that's a fun one. That's even more fun for me now with a little kid because I get to do it all over again, you know.
That's
Um,
just yeah, it's
yeah,
it's so fun. You get to let your freak flag fly.
yeah. Um, it's a special one that I plugged in just for you. Favorite guitar and or guitar amp setup.
Oh my gosh.
And when I say
Well,
favorite, that can mean the one that's your favorite right now, and 20 minutes from now it could change. I'm just like, what's right now?
the thing that gets me really going is either that Les Paul or that Telecaster, and I've got an Egnator Tweaker 40 combo that's a 112 40-watt 2-channel everything that Egnator puts on an amp, and it's just makes me drool.
Lovely. Lovely.
And bass, when I go bass, it's my 76 jazz bass through like an SVT,
Mm.
but I am not strong enough and I don't make enough money playing music to hire a person that's strong enough to carry an SVT head and cabinet.
Yeah, yeah. To that point, when I was in college, I somehow wound up with a Fender Super Twin, and it was because of Ted Nugent that I wanted that amp. It was a terrible sounding amp, but I was really proud of it, and I had like some good distortion stuff going in the front because it was one of those that it was 160 watts. It had six L6 tubes in it for the power drive section. You could not get it to distort, no matter how loud you turn it
Right.
up. You know, when you're playing in a club with 35 people in there, you don't need that amount of power. But it had the big EV speakers with the giant magnets in it
Mm-hmm.
plus this giant transformer. And I weighed it one time. It weighed 147 pounds.
I've got
Yeah.
a
So I feel
112
you.
gold Carvin amp with one of those EVs in it. The thing weighs about 75
Yep.
pounds. I mean,
Yep.
it's not that big, but it's
Hmm.
like a black hole.
Yes. Yeah. I've gone through multiple iterations of Mesa Boogie Mark One, Mark Two, and all that, and they were the same way. You know, they're the size of a Princeton, but they weigh as much as a Marshall. You know, so
Well, I had a dual rectifier set
oh
up for
yeah.
a long time, and it's just like you were saying, you can't turn that thing up loud enough in a club or anywhere I would play to make it do what it
Mm-mm.
needed to do. That thing has to be in a stadium or something for it to stretch its legs
It
out. So I got rid of that and started going through more compact power and less speakers, and that
yeah.
Egnator is
Yeah, the
beautiful.
the dual rectifier reminds me of the remember in Jurassic Park when whatever that main character was talking about T-Rex and he's like, no, no, no. T-Rex will not survive in a cage. He means to hunt. He has to do it.
Right.
He will find a way. That's what the rectifier was for me too, yeah. All right,
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
to the next question. Crunchy or smooth?
I like I used to like smooth, but I've gotten into crunchy lately. I don't
Fair
know
enough.
why.
Fair enough. Um, if you could only eat one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
It's a family show, right?
Sure.
Uh,
Whatever you want it to be, man. There's no wrong answers.
I would say the strawberries and cream from La Madeleine restaurants. There's a
Ooh,
French restaurant. I don't know if y'all have them, but there's a La Madeleine, and they're in Houston where I used to live. And they had this thing, and it was a cup of strawberries with this Romanoff sauce, and it was just the absolute freaking best.
sounds amazing.
And then the other would be, I remember I went to France, and me and my wife, we got a chicken and a baguette and ate it on the beach, and that was the best damn chicken and bread I've ever had. I think I could eat that thing forever.
Fantastic. Yeah, now you're making me hungry. All right, got a couple more
I know.
questions.
Well, Salt Lick burn ins. Now I got to go to Salt Lick.
Yeah, yeah, I've had that. That is delectable. David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar?
Oh, now you got me talking. I gotta say, Sammy, man. David Lee Ross just rubbed me the wrong way for some
Yeah,
reason.
fair enough. For
That,
me,
that
and
was
yeah, and anybody who's ever listened to me do this show knows that I don't think I've ever done a show and not asked that question, and I almost always have to say that the correct answer for me is Eddie,
yeah,
because
well,
that's
that's
what
what
it
I
was.
was gonna say. I was
Yeah,
gonna say, can I say Eddie?
you can say whatever you want.
Eddie
Um,
Eddie's the drawing card. And for me, one of the most underrated bass players and singers is Michael Anthony. I mean, that to
Absolutely.
me, I mean, it was Eddie and Michael Anthony next. And then I was like,
Yes.
okay, well, the singer's okay. Drummer's really freaking good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
was always more a fan of the core band than the singer. But
Yeah. Yeah. And
anyway,
then final question. Please share a cherished family tradition, either one that you've created in your own family unit or one that you received from your upbringing, that when we're all gone and no one remembers our names 20 generations from now, you hope your family is still carrying on.
oh wow. Uh, Taking time in the day to be grateful for things. I think that's an underrated thing. That, I mean, to me, we were talking about, in the introduction, love is the greatest vibration. To me, gratitude is just another version of love. I mean, the Inuits have 32 different names for snow.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's at least 32 different names for love, and gratitude is one of those. It's gratitude, it's love for the now, it's love for uh, the people that came before you that made things easier. The people, I'm grateful for all the programmers that created Zoom so that we can have this conversation. I mean, little things. I'm grateful for this nice cup of coffee that stayed warm on my cup warmer here that somebody's made and my daughter bought for me. So, I mean, this is like all, everyone's like, well, what am I grateful for? It's real freaking easy if you take yourself back out of your own equation of victimhood and all of that. And victimhood will keep you from feeling the little bits of gratitude that will get you to the greater bits of gratitude over time. So I would say just the taking of time every day, at least once, to sort of gather up your gratitude and throw it into the universe.
I agree completely with that. And that makes me think of the quote from Wallace Wattles that the entire process can be summed up in one word: gratitude.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
All right. Well, Chuck, I appreciate you being on the show with me. Again, if anybody wants to find where Chuck is, you can go to harmonicthought.com. And if you're interested in any of the work that he's doing with Dr. Joe Vitale, zerolimitmentoring.com. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
All right. And everyone listening in, I appreciate you being on here. Chuck, I'm grateful for you, man. And we will see you guys next time.